welcome. Thanks for joining our first tokenomics workshop and hopefully the start of getting or gaining knowledge on this new emerging field. And we will talk about the book Economics and Math of Token Engineering and DeFi. And we will start with chapter 1, which introduces us to the economics of token engineering. So what is tokenomics first? It's an abbreviation of token economics. It's a new emerging field in economics, and it focuses or looks into incentive design and mechanisms of token-based ecosystems. So as I'm saying, it's a new field. I'm not an expert, and there are probably not that many experts around. So if you have any questions, feedback, or whatsoever, I would love to hear that. Any discussions are more than welcome as well. It's not yet a college or university recognized field, so we cannot get a bachelor in tokenomics yet. That's why we are having these bi-weekly meetings to discuss tokenomics literature or interesting tokenomics structure or projects that have interesting tokenomics. Can be pretty much everything. And this week we will discuss the first chapter of the book that I just mentioned. So the outline of this chapter, we have several topics, and at the end I will come up. I wrote some discussion and conclusion points, and hopefully look back on an hour that we learned something about tokenomics. So I'm a bit critical on this book. It has some grammatical errors and also some things that I still didn't understand after several times reading. But they start giving us this figure. And if you're not familiar with blockchain consists mainly of layer 1, and recently layer 2s have been developed. And we'll explain about, talk about them a little bit more in a bit. And then we have application that use layer 1 or layer 2. Also, if I'm saying something wrong, please correct me. So then the book gave another interesting figure where they tried to link the digital world with the physical world example. So for layer 1, they took the English language as an example. And for layer 2, the English dialect. And as an application is a country that uses this language or this dialect. I'm not 100% happy with this example. I'm more interested in the digital world example that they give here. So layer 1 is pretty much a protocol, the blockchain, for example, Ethereum, and that can send data from one node to another node. And the node in this case is a computer that runs the Ethereum network. And a layer 2 is, well, as it says, it's a layer on top of Ethereum, for example. And there are several rollups. That's how they call layer 2s. We have a ZK zero knowledge rollup. Not going into that, but what they do is they aggregate transactional data, and instead of doing that on Ethereum, they do that off the blockchain. They call that off-chain, and then they will update Ethereum at once. And then an application is can be anything that just makes use of the blockchain or layer 1 or layer 2. So it can be sending data or digital tokens. So yeah, as I said, I'm not really happy with this example. I don't think it really clarifies that much. But if there are any questions, don't hesitate to ask those. So focusing more on the economics part, So crypto economics boils down to what incentives drive the desired behavior of the economy. So what I thought was an interesting example is the increase in interest rates by the Federal Reserve. That's quite a extensive topic nowadays, and it will result in companies and consumers putting more money away to cover the interest payments. And this is one example of what incentives drive the desired behavior. Well, I'm not sure if spending money on paying interest rates is desired, but that's what the Fed tries to do. They try to make the US dollar more valuable, and as a result, stocks will plummet. As earnings are lower, companies need to make their payments for the loans, and also people need to, like people as in consumers need to pay their loans. So that's just what I thought an interesting example of crypto economics or just economics. And now we want to focus more on the digital decentralized world because that's what we are working on. So yeah, we want to make this. We want to distinguish, or there is a distinguishment between the physical world and the digital decentralized world. But the tokens, they can be used to incentivize a particular utility strategy. There can be a financial incentive, such as a fungible token. And a fungible token, if we want to have like a real world example of that, is like a $5 bill can be replaced by any other $5 bill as they're equally worth and they look the same. Examples for the people that know several tokens such as Uniswap, Decentraland, and Sandbox are some examples of those tokens. Then we have some relatively new incentive, which is the non-financial incentive turned into tokens. So non-fungible tokens are tokens that are unique and cannot be directly replaced by one another. So one NFT might have the same price on OpenSea, but they're not the same. So they cannot be replaced. And then you have Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is a very famous NFT project. NFTs can represent an asset in the physical world. It can represent a painting. It can represent, well, the Bored Ape Yacht Club. So this community that people want to be part of. So what is more important, or what distinguishes the real world with compared to the digital world, is the system. And this is a bit vague, but the token-based economy consists mainly of closed-loop systems, and a physical traditional world consists of one big open loop system in a way. And I want to elaborate a bit more on that. So if we look at the US dollar, the Fed, Federal Reserve, the controller, or in other words, the policymaker, introduces a new policy, and the motor in this sense should represent the economy. And then the output, so whatever happens because of their new policy, is, although people try to predict it, it's not very easy to predict. If they increase interest rates, they have a prediction that it might plummet the stocks, but also it might not, because there are so many other factors that are part of that output. So if we look at the token-based economy, if we look at, for example, the Valorize ecosystem, that is, for now, relatively small. So if we introduce a certain tokenomics design, and then our small ecosystem or small community will give us some output. But because it's so small, it's quite well, it's quite, we can overview it. We can have this, there is some feedback system. If the token design is not correct, or there's something, actually it goes well, we will see that quite easily in this closed loop system, because we have a relatively controllable environment. So that is, to come back to your question, Javi, what I think is the biggest difference between the real world and our digital ecosystem. So some primary functions of a token is pretty much anything that represents value. So it can have an intrinsic value, which is the use value. We'll talk a bit about that later on. And then we have the extrinsic value, which is what people give it to by trading on a secondary market using an exchange. So its main function is to act as the main incentive driver in a network or ecosystem. And the important part is to capture the economic value from within the ecosystem. That means that the token, if it's used for a certain purpose, it will collect, or it will capture that value, and it should not focus on gaining value on the secondary market. So there are several reasons to create a token. You can tokenize a specific financial strategy. You can also tokenize an underlying asset. For example, our Valorize application. It can help with accounting purposes. For example, we have a list of contributors that have done certain tasks. And by giving tokens to these contributors, we can pretty much, it's like some form of accounting. And then also in the same way, we can, it helps with distribution purposes. For example, airdropping royalties to the artists that we will acquire for our NFT project. And also, tokens can align the incentives of participants, which can also be done with money, of course. So it's not exclusive to tokens, but this is a possibility. So the book gives this overview of the functions of a token, and I want to talk a little bit about this. So we have different functions. A token function as security, a utility, money, or as a stable token. And if we focus on it being a security for now, its purpose is to represent the underlying asset. Its valuation is pegged to this underlying asset, and its feature is that you can trade it. If we look at utility, it means that it's useful for something, and it gives access to this internal network. And then it gets its valuation from usage in this internal ecosystem, and it can be used for these transactions within the ecosystem. And then if we look at money, it can work for payments. It can be used for payments. It's valuated via the market, and its feature is to function as a currency. Then last one is the functionality as a stable token, which means it cannot be affected by external volatility. Its valuation is pegged by underlying asset, which is often a stable asset, obviously, and it will have a controlled price level as a consequence. So to actually properly design a token, to really design its tokenomics, we will need a collection of parameters, and we can use those to design the tokenomics of an ecosystem. So the book showed us this very nice graph. I'm not going too deep into this for sake of time, but I want to explain the different designs that we will have to look at. So we have the market design, mechanism design, and token design. So the market is the environment in which trade happens. So we can use the Ethereum network. That will be our market. But if you look at from a bigger point of view, we'll have the crypto market. Then the mechanism is the rules that the participants need to follow in the market, and the token design is pretty much set by a smart contract or a set of smart contracts, which you probably already know. But yeah, these are actually parameters that we can also consult ourselves when we are designing our token model. So then there were several frequently asked questions. I think there were a total of 10, and personally I didn't feel like showing all 10 of them, so I took 2 of the most important ones. And the first one that I was interested in is, what are some underlying economic concepts that are fundamental to tokenomics? So there are several theories. I'm a little bit familiar with game theory, but with the others I'm not. So why am I showing this? These are all difficult terms, but when we go through this book, with every, hopefully we'll cover some chapters. Most of them will be covered and explained. Also, I want to use this as a reference, as I will be sharing these PowerPoint slides in the Discord channel. And if you have time or interest in researching these topics, these will be key for becoming a tokenomics expert. And the next question I wanted to cover was, why is governance so important in tokenomics? So I understand that this is a very important question. However, I do not really understand the answer that the book was giving us. I don't have an economic background. So what I try to do every presentation is to also share something that is a bit challenging for me, or maybe for other people as well, and maybe we can try to understand that. So what it says to answer this question: governance helps to organize transactions within the ecosystem through endogenous mechanisms. That I understand, but making it safe for participation, I personally do not understand. So if you have any input on that, I would love to hear that. And preventing congestion when issues arise is also a part I personally do not understand, and they don't really elaborate on that in the book as well. Yeah, so it's just like, it's more summarizing the features of a blockchain, like it's trustless, it's decentralized, and yeah. So I will then we probably just focus on more token related questions or answers, I would say, later on. So this was actually the last frequently asked question I wanted to cover. So as I said, I will finish with some discussion or conclusion, well, actually more conclusion points. Tokenomics is a very interesting and new emerging field. It looks into incentive design and mechanisms of token-based ecosystems. And the goal of tokenomics is to define, design, and build the intrinsic value of tokens. And this extrinsic value, where investors are mainly focused on, is determined on the secondary markets. So to distinguish the token-based economy from the worldwide fiat economy, is that tokens allow for more control of the output given the input. So at least the tokenomics allow for more control of the output given the input, compared to the fiat in a worldwide open loop system, where the output might be predicted but is still unclear, as our world is quite complex. So we can use feedback to improve our tokenomics, and that is probably something we will do with the Valorize token model. Thanks for tuning into the Tokenomics Academy of Valorize DAO. please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button for more tokenomics content. And see you at the next one.